Hello, and welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Today's guest is Miss Darnita Samuels. Hi, Darnita.
Hey, Dr. Connie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, very well. Thank you for asking. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. We are honored to have you.
Thank you.
May I please introduce our audience to your amazing work?
Yes, please.
Awesome. Darnita is a licensed marriage and family therapist from Detroit. She has been practicing for 10 years and owns Agape Healing and Wellness Center, PLLC, with locations in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Houston, Texas. Darnita earned her master's in marriage and family therapy from Pfeiffer University in Charlotte, North Carolina. She will be attending Texas Women's University in the fall to begin the PhD in marriage and family therapy. Congratulations! In her free time, she enjoys reading, traveling, attending church, and spending time with her church family. She's a foodie, so you may see her anywhere, so don't be afraid to say hi. Or for the people from Detroit, what up, Doe?
Oh.
Is that what you guys say from Detroit?
Yeah. Yes, anybody been watching BMF, everybody always try to clone it, and we can tell who's from Detroit and not because they don't really know how to pronounce it. That's like an internal.
How did I do?
You did good. You did good.
Okay. I'm not from Detroit. I've actually only been there once, so that's awesome to hear that. Yeah. So what brings you? Well, before we get into all of that, first of all, I am impressed. I love the fact that you specialize in marriage and family therapy, and I can already tell there's not a lot of Black people that you went to school with who studied with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is that showing up in your work? That there's not a lot of us doing this.
Oh wow. So the referrals, right? People are asking, I specifically want a marriage and family therapist who looks like me, which is a person of color.
Correct.
I know some of the people I went to school with in Charlotte, and then making other connections through conferences and different things like that. Here where I currently reside in Houston, I am getting connected in the therapy community. The fortunate piece, I was able to find 3 marriage and family therapists here from one I made a connection with about 4 years ago at a conference. But it's been...
Okay, so you're saying when you're ready to make referrals. So you're getting so much business, you can't see them all. So you need to refer out and you can't find any.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
A bit further with that, because so in Charlotte, I have 2 therapists that work under me there. They're full to the brim.
Wow.
So we'll be hiring there as well as here in Houston as well, because girls are coming and there's not enough people.
Yeah. Wow. Well, what I do love about, because I believe statistically it's 4% Black therapists in general. So that's psychologists, counselor educators, LPC, LCSW, LMF. So I guess when you break it down to LMFT,
yes,
that's just such a rare breed. Now I know you specialize in inner child work, and that's so important. We're definitely going to go into that. But I want to ask, I did my dissertation, I was an LPC, but I did my dissertation on marital attitudes and expectations in the Black community. So I'm very passionate about that type of work. What are you seeing in terms of one thing that it's not a bad problem to have when business is overflowing, right? And it doesn't sound like you're complaining. But it is a little bit frustrating that from a professional perspective, we just don't it's just really hard to have the resources and stuff available to serve all these clients.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Aside from what do you think is the cause of this? Because I know a lot of what I was studying, and this was only a few years ago, is that we didn't really see the value. What I'm hearing you say is, well, we are trying to get the help, it's just not, the resources aren't available for us to utilize that. Can you make any sense of that?
So there's a lot of things that kind of play. So actually today is my 7-year business anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But when I first started, it was hard to get people in the door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then I became fully booked in 2018, rolling through 2019, and here it comes, the implosive 2020, right?
COVID.
It's COVID, and then so many people actually had to sit down and deal with themselves, so they couldn't run away. There was no avoidance factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, just being in the neighborhood, walking, and different things like that. What are you doing? You're likely thinking. You're a lot of things that are contributing to the demise of how you see yourself, your relationship, however, right? So when people are coming in, I think for us in the Black community, it's a few things that are happening. The stigma of therapy being released and rejected.
I love it. I love it.
I also think that people are like, I am tired of carrying this burden. Throw around the term, soft life. I want to live a soft life.
Love
right?
it. Yes. I
And
just think about that today.
So then it's just like, okay, so how do you define your soft life? Because are you chasing money, or are you just chasing the peace, the joy, the happiness, and the contentment of where you are right now, right? Redefine and how you see yourself. So with working with couples, they're coming in and they're like, we're desperate because we're not communicating. What I see in my clients are the battle, right? Who had it worse? You're not listening to me. You're not validating how I feel. Another person is like, I'm burnt, I'm tired. I've served you, I've catered to you, and I can just never make you happy. So now I'm checking out. So there's a lot of different things. And the other ones are just like, we never knew what healthy relationships look like. So we're struggling to define what healthy is for us. Working through a lot of different things all at the same time. So we're going back to the inner child wounds. All these little children from our past are popping up. And some of our children, these are our grandparents' children. These are parents' children. These are the ancestors we never knew about, just know in their line, those children. So the battle of how do I show up today as the effective person that I need to be versus giving all this space to the kids who want to come out and play.
Got you. Oh, I love that. I love that. Just wanted to piggyback off of something you said. I was having I think we as a society, we do such a disservice when we talk about our history, because we talk about our history of slavery as if it was ancient Greek, whatever. I was telling my daughter that I remember my grandmother telling me about her grandmother who was a slave. So we're not that far removed from this horrible institution that has dictated and disrupted some of our family dynamics. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, okay, so we have a history of shaming, people of color for their history, how they come over, right? So this, the thing that Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida with, getting rid of Black history because it makes other people feel bad.
Yeah, we can't make them feel uncomfortable.
Right, what I mean? Sit in discomfort and dis-ease all the time, right? It just becomes our badge of honor and our, if you want to say, our superpower, right? We have to dispel that too. However, if we can honor the fact that we have been such a resilient people, and person of faith, I think you really can appreciate this, because I was praying and I asked God, I said, God, why do we have to go through slavery? Why is it every time we turn around, somebody is trying to get us? One thing I feel like the Holy Spirit told me was, it'll never happen because you always bounce back and you always find a way to make it. Other people wish that they could be that way. So if we take away the stigma and the shame and the, I'll say, ill-replaced guilt of our own feelings about slavery, and honor the fact of they try all of this to separate us from the country and the countries, the continent and everything else that we came from, our history and our culture. And what did? We created our own history, another culture that, right? Because we are not a displaced people. We are an evolved people, if you really want to, right? Why be ashamed of that? Because think about other nations that have been enslaved. The nation has collapsed fully and completely. There's been no area where they've actually been able to rebuild, right? Except us.
Love that.
And that's something to be proud of. So whether our enslaved ancestors ran or they stayed on the plantation, it was still an onus and a courage that took to do both.
Mm-hmm.
Still tap that same courage. What's going to stop us now?
I love it. Darnita, I just have to say this. We were talking before we came on, and I'm doing my own work around this. But by the time this gets publicized, we are broadcasted. I will have come out about my incarceration. And just listening to you, I couldn't help but think about, even as I was incarcerated. For those of you who know my story, and I won't go into it in too much detail right now, although I will have other resources available for that. But it was a terrible injustice, I believe, on both sides with respect to my crime and also what occurred to me as well. I saw a lot of that being incarcerated with Black women. I'm not trying to knock what's happening with Black men in terms of, police brutality and things like that, because that's horrible. But I do think it's a little bit easier to see it because it is in your face. But when you're talking about Black women and money and things like that and being behind the scenes, that there's also a real heavy injustice and prosecution on these women of color who are being successful in the workforce. I say that because I think about what you're saying, though, in terms of the resilience. Like, I could not have been more proud. I'm not putting like a badge of honor and saying, hey, go to prison, it's not, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But to have been there and to see how these Black women, similar to myself, were there for much longer because they didn't have some of the things I had to get a reduced sentence, but be there and just hold their head up and carry themselves with dignity, oftentimes much more so than the guards who they had to answer to,
Right.
and speaking and knowing how to get things done within a system that's created and defined by its ability to take your identity and humiliate you. I couldn't have been more proud. I know that sounds horrible, but it's in our blood. Like, we are survivors.
Yes.
That's what we do.
Thrive in areas where others would collapse.
Yes.
And we teach ourselves that. We go from sometimes a very angry perspective of revenge more so than replenish.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we could learn how to just say, okay, that did happen to us, but guess what? Guess where I am, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you can make it through that, what else can I make it through? And that's a challenge to push yourself forward and forward and forward. Mm-hmm. And it goes. So whether it's community activism, whether it's through therapy, whether it's through releasing yourself from the generational curses that have attached to the family, right? Mm-hmm. You be free. You deserve to have a good life and a happy life. Mm-hmm. We no longer have to adopt that downtrodden story.
Mm-hmm. We don't. No, we don't. I love where we're going with this, Darnita, and one of the things that I've noticed even in running this program, again, I'm not an LMFT, my training is not in marriage and family therapy, but I've noted, forgive me for my own bias, but I thought going a more general tract would be more helpful because of my ignorance and not recognizing that the inner child piece that comes with marriage and family therapy, if that makes sense. Like, I've referred people to our website and looking for a Black therapist, and people have said, well, I'm not looking for marriage, or thinking that to get a marriage and family therapist, you need to be like on the brink of divorce and, and just whatever. So help us fill that in, because I'm hearing you say you do the inner child work to help with this. So how does that connect? Because I think that a lot of people, including myself, have been a little bit confused about that.
Yeah. So, and I'll say this, that I don't know of a program or MFT or anything that teaches inner child wounds.
Okay.
That you pick up along the way as you develop a practice, and then all of a sudden, so like times where I have been in a session, like the number 7 will just like pop right here in my head.
Okay.
And I'm 7.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden people will be like, oh my God. And I'm just like, okay, well, what just happened? What happened to you at 7? And we uncover a lot of different things. And in uncovering and trying to say, okay, then doing research to try to figure out how do you help these people release it, right? Okay. Going through the acceptance and then the reparenting and different things like that of it, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what. Okay, so these inner child wounds keep popping up and going. So that prevents you from actually being able to be your whole full adult self. And so then other pieces are brought off. So it might fall into IFS or narrative therapy, right? We go into a lot of different spaces with that. With marriage and family therapy, we are, a lot of them, I'll tell you this too, a lot of marriage and family therapists don't like working with couples. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah, because we can get into some real couples work, right? I will say even 70% of my practice are individual Black females.
Love it. Okay.
And so, but sometimes we bring their partner in to see what the dynamic is, especially if a person starts to really override in a session, meaning they're always talking about this one person. It's like, well, do you mind if we meet with them to see what this relationship dynamic is like and how it really takes?
Right.
Then we start to see and kind of change up plan, treatment, and everything else. So it's an ever evolving. And I'll say that marriage and family therapy, sometimes I was discouraged to be a marriage and family therapist, honestly, in the beginning.
Why do you think so?
Because of jobs, right?
Yeah.
Now,
the
land of MFT, because that's where it was created and born, right? Well, I lived in North Carolina. One of the things was the VA, federal government. They tell you to get a good job, different things like that, right? They wouldn't hire MFT originally. For LPCs and social workers, that was it.
A lot of it has to do with billing and stuff too, right? Like a lot of times I know insurance companies don't want to pay for
couples.
Yeah.
So definitely opening up is broadening. We were just able to actually accept Medicare.
Right.
So before that was LCSWs. And so now we're still evolving and growing, and we are a very small field of it, but it's a growing field.
Good. So well, I guess that's a little comforting knowing, it's even rare obviously for the Black community, but it sounds like the LMFT in general is something that is still just emerging and is new.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Everywhere you look and see, people are struggling in their relationships. And they're struggling with their, it sells in all the movies and social media and in our real life, we see it. So that's so weird that there's such a disconnect. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so because I'm, okay. So this is a shameless plug. I'm not even getting paid for this, but when I tell you, if you really want to know what an inner child wound looks like, have you Unprisoned?
What about it?
Have you seen Unprisoned on Hulu?
I want to. I've seen the commercial with Kerry Washington. Yes.
You've got to watch.
Yes. Yes. I've heard you're like the 10th therapist who's made that recommendation for me, so I definitely need to get on that. Yeah.
And in there, it's so many nuggets. Literally on prison, somebody can do their whole dissertation on, but Carrie's inner child, and you also see Delroy Lindo, who is her father. You see his inner child and why he started on the track of recidivism.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, and then coupled with the fact of how racism, a real role, because he's from some part of Alabama. He saw something happen to his mother, him on the road, right? But then also it shows how people formulate relationships, and once you start to repair one relationship that has a huge impact on your life, then all your other relationships start to repair as well.
Oh, that's good.
Also about that system piece Yes.
And it's so hard when a system is created that doesn't include us. In slavery, you weren't allowed to be legally married. I can't imagine. The slave master could come have sex with your wife, and if you did something about it, you would be killed.
Absolutely. And if she was a virgin, he took it first.
Man, I was doing some reading. I don't know if you know about this, but like the buck breaking and stuff like that, the way they would do it, like as a form of punishment. Like, not only do you get beat, but then just to add insult to injury, I'm gonna do this in front of your wife, in front of your child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't even. So when we look at the state of our marriages and relationships today, I mean, what do you say?
And that's the thing. So that's when it's like one conversation, one thing at a time. Because a lot of people want to steamroll and just be like, okay, fix me. Yeah. I am not a genie, right? Honey, these people couldn't afford me. However, but I'll say this, I think the biggest reward and the biggest return on our internal investment, right, is repairing that part of us that feels, for some reason, either unlovable, unloved, not good enough, or, even aspects of imposter syndrome. So that we claim the things that have been stolen from us, either on purpose or unknowingly, thinking that we were lovingly raising our children. So when we think about it in that aspect, we are empowering people and giving them their own self-love. Because I think, so self-care has become a cliche term. However, the beginning of self-care actually was an altruistic meaning. People who were institutionalized in the 50s and the 60s, they were given self-care, meaning they were able to make some small decisions about things that was dealing with them and their care while they were institutionalized. And when I say institutionalized, mental institutions.
That's what I was going to ask. Okay, good.
Yeah, mental institutions and things like that. So these were people with personality disorders, behavior disorder, all those things that could not live in the world society. And so to give them still some freedom and autonomy and a form of self-esteem, they gave them self-care, which meant making them, giving them their own choices and decisions, right? However, then it was in the 60s and 70s with the Black Panthers, actually, because it was like, nobody's going to give us anything. So we have to take care of ourselves, self-care. So that's when they started the food drives, schools, banks, different things like that, right? Even self-protection, right? And fast forward, with Oprah and self-care, and everybody took it.
Everybody wants to do it. And now, like you said, we're into the soft life. So yeah.
But when I say self-love, it's like, okay, how do you really love yourself? Are you loving yourself with the appropriate choices and decisions that you're making for yourself? Are you taking care of this body? Because if you take care of this body, we only get one temple, right? If you take care of it, it'll take care of you. I mean, but self-love is like, okay, you're thirsty. Did you drink some water? Did you even give yourself the gift of water? You don't have to starve yourself. Sometimes self-love is saying no to things that, it's like, okay, we may have this FOMO, the fear of missing out, but it's just like, I'm exhausted and I probably do. One eye's almost closed. No. Go take care of yourself, love yourself, give yourself what you need, and you can come back out to outside the play. Close no more. So it'll be open when you get back out. Right? So those are some of the things we talk about, we're talking about the inner child and everything else, because in general, that's when inner child will start to pop out when we burn and everything else. And that child is raging, and we think that we're very rational adult, right? Our 10-year-old self is just like,
right. When I hear you talk about this, I think about, I guess, Erikson's developmental stages. Are you saying that we get stuck in our childhood?
We do, at different emotional stances. So what I like to say is I describe it as whatever you define, right? Your inner self defines as an emotional trauma. Your emotions stop there. Your physical body continues to grow. So whether you were abused by multiple people, different times, or one parent come up and say one thing that completely just tore you apart and changed how you were, you kind of stop right there. So it affects all your relationships, how you formulate relationships, how you show up, and then also how you assert yourself with a voice as well. Because anything that looks, smells, or feels like that incident, you're reacting based upon that age.
One thing that I find is that people often think like the cutoff culture, like that's a form of self-care. And while, of course, we don't need to be letting people abuse us or take advantage of us, there's value in working through problems with people.
Yes.
Can you tell me can you speak a little bit to that in terms of just, I think it's a dichotomy. I mean, on the one hand, we want to have these healthy relationships. On the other hand, well, the minute I see her, this, I'm going to cut you off. It just,
right.
How are you going to have a strong relationship with these people?
And that's the thing, because it makes it too easy. Right now, it's so easy to not formulate a relationship or a very surface relationship. So it's easier to move on because we emotionally detach. But if we are always...
Please describe that. I'm sorry. I want to let you keep going, but emotionally detached, break that down, because it goes here on me. So
emotional detachment is, I'm going to wall up and I'm going to defend myself, and I'm only going to give you so much of me, just in case you're out to hurt me. So if you do, then I don't have to go through the grief, the crying, the tears, and everything else. I'll say, oh, it is what it is, and I'm just moving on. Even though there's still some things that are attached that need to be repaired, whether the relationship needs to be repaired or not. There's healing that needs to take place. But we just want to move on, not feel anything. And, for that old statement is like, oh, you thought you had me, but you didn't.
Facts. And let me elaborate on that, because it's so funny, because everybody's had that happen to them and probably have participated as well. But it's funny because I can think of somebody who's called themselves doing that to me, but it still bothers them. So if the purpose is to, so you won't feel and you won't get bothered, anything that triggers them about me, or especially if I'm successful in something, or something good happens for me, it's like it bothers you. So why don't we just work on repairing the relationship, as opposed to cutting me off and then pretending like I don't bother you? Meanwhile, yes, I do.
And that actually that kind of walks you into the forgiveness aspect.
Yes.
Because we're holding somebody hostage, and they are out here having a ball,
living their best life.
The only person that's suffering is us.
It's us.
We're punished ourselves on this sentence, right? And this crusade of whatever, right? As you said, somebody, they get an accolade, they do this, that. It's just like, what in the world? How does it happen? And it's just like, you want to know why? Because you moved on in life, and that was just for. But you're holding everything is for you. Oh,
And they're doing that in their personal, in their intimate relationships and stuff too.
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much so. Because what'll happen is, it's this thing of almost like revenge, right? Or punishment, I should say. Punitive punishment. Because I say punishment is punitive, and that means I really want to inflict harm or pain on you. If I correct you, I'm like, you spoke to me earlier today, and that didn't feel good for me. I'm going to ask that you kind of change that. And here's the reason why, right? Correction is, I love you enough to know that you're acting outside of who you really are. And I'm going to bring it to your attention to give you an opportunity to correct it. But then I'm also going to love you through it. That's my definition. Okay. We talk about this, cut off or cancel culture.
There we go. That's what I meant.
To throw everything away. And it's just like, you cannot, it's like we cease seeing the value of the individual or the experience. So therefore we can't get a lesson from it. We don't know what it looks like to resolve conflict or return from something like, a sense of betrayal or anything like that, right? And so the same thing happens in this relationship, because unfortunately on social media, we are bombarded with people who have relationships with these lavish lifestyles, right? So he bought me a Bentley, and then he took, you know what I'm saying? And he flew me to Dubai for our first date and everything else. That's highly unrealistic. And then there's also articles out there that saying that some of these women have become prostitutes.
Hello.
I mean, pick your poison, do what you're gonna, right? But understand the full gamut of it. They don't, they don't really amplify the ones that put in the work. So you may see the Krishan and blue faces, right? And some people be like, oh, that's some love. And it's like, no, it's not. It's abject abuse, right?
Yes.
Levels of dysfunction.
Yes.
Have, one of my favorite couples, former President Obama and Mrs. Michelle Obama, right? And I'm just loving every minute of them, because when I tell you, I had two people who don't keep it more real, and I'll say community.
Yes, yes.
Than them. And even she said in an interview with Oprah recently, she was like, we've been married 30 years. 10 of those, I couldn't stand them.
Right. Love it. Love it.
If I have the rate, she was, I had 20 good years, I'll take those odds, and I'm working on it. Mm-hmm. And honestly, they have to go to couples counseling twice.
They did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not, if you really look at the real true meaning of marriage, it's not one of those things of, well, we're gonna have a big old party, see how much money we can get. Because if that's the case, rent out an event space and bill it as something else and charge $200 a ticket. You gonna have somebody show up? Mm-hmm. A gown or in a great, tux or a suit. Have fun, have a party, but don't bind yourself to somebody.
Forever, right, absolutely.
What it's supposed to be forever, because forever does not have an exit strategy. Mm-hmm. And people are planning exit strategies, and it's just like, well, what are you doing this thing for? You might as well just continue to date, check in every 5 years, maybe see a therapist, right? To say, okay, it's working for us to be together. If it is, continue for the next 5. And if it's not, try to figure out how to uncouple.
Love it. I want to make sure, okay, so for the listener who just had an eye-awakening moment about cancel culture, I don't want to confuse them for, times when relationships should be cut off. Like you're talking about the lavish lifestyle that we see on Instagram, and I think about abuse, things like that. So how is one to know, okay, this is because of my own inner child wound that I want to cut off, versus, no, this is really unhealthy, not good, I do need to cut this off? What's some things we can look for?
That's a good question. Generally speaking, if the person has literally been doing the same behavior in every relationship, it's them.
Okay.
Or attracting the same type of person. Mm-hmm. Now, if you feel like that you have gone on a journey of healing, and when I'm saying, let me just talk about that, because sometimes healing is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes I thought I was healed, and then it's just like something happens and triggers them, and boom. No, that's just another opportunity to grow in your healing. Okay. But if you know and you set boundaries, really good boundaries that are solid, they're not based on fear, they're not based on enmeshment or anything like that. These are really good, healthy boundaries, and the person is violating, okay. You've warned them, you've given the opportunity to self-correct, and they haven't. It's, usually that thing. And I'll give an example. I have a no cussing at me policy.
Oh, love it. Mm-hmm.
And you can't cuss at me, okay? Because you get mad at me, you gonna rip me apart. Mm-hmm. I had a person in my life who I thought was a really good friend, and they cussed at me, and I said, listen, I just heard you. You violated my boundary, right?
Just to be clear, that's cussing at you, not in front of you.
No, cussing at.
Okay.
Right.
Like, shut the fuck up or something like that. Excuse
right.
me. I don't even curse. Oh my God, on the show. I just was really trying to follow you. Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, the difference.
They're like, wait a minute, you just violated my boundary.
Right.
Their excuse was, I'm from such and such, so that's what we do. And I'm like, I'm from here too. I don't do that. Mm-hmm. So opportunity to remain my friend, change your behaviors towards me and how you speak, or I'm going to wish you well. Or one of my clients gave me this phrase, and I told her, I was like, I am stealing it. Go with God. He got better plans for you than I do.
There you go. Love it. And let me just apologize too.
No.
I was like, yeah, because that's weird, because I don't even curse on the show. I was just really so into what you were saying. I wanted to make sure it was very, very clear, but I did not mean any disrespect.
Oh, I already know.
Look, I don't want you cancel culture and me on my show or anything like that.
You specifically, real quick?
Yes.
Don't worry about it. You have such a pure spirit.
Thank you.
I have been in conversations with people with malintent and malice.
I understand. There is a difference. Yeah, there is a difference.
So like this, because I've been off the podcast, I was like, oh yeah, and I gave them very succinct, clear, no bantering answers, and I'm moving on.
Got it. Uh-huh.
you're, you're pure. You're surrounded by light. So I just want you to know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying working with you and getting to some of this information. So this is really great. I want to know, okay, so how, because I think that when we become adults, we forget so much what it's like to be a child, for how we interact with our own children, but also internally. Like, I just remember promises and stuff that I made to myself as a child, or goals or dreams, or or traumas and things not met. But how do you get an adult? We're so present-minded, like in the moment today. How do you get a 35-year-old to recognize that's really his 15-year-old acting out? Like, how do you connect those dots?
Yes, that's good. But then I also want to add a piece to what you said, because some of us in our childhood were never children.
That part. So some of us don't even have an inner child to have an inner child.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
And anger right there.
Yes.
Going back to your example of a 35-year-old who may not even know or have forgotten, right? You're introducing them to things that children used to do. Oh, if they have children, I tell them, go play with your child and not the video game.
Right.
Watch a YouTube video if you don't know how to, do two square.
Right.
Go outside and play with this kid. The amusement parks, color, draw, things. I'm just like, even for me, sometimes it's just like releasing emotions. I always get a dartboard with multiple darts and just throw darts. I haven't put a feelings wheel up there. Explore their emotions, because a lot of times they don't know what they are feeling emotionally. Then they know they're feeling something. They just can't. I'm like, blow that feelings wheel up, put it on that dartboard, and get to throwing. Right? And sometimes it's like, have you ever been to a football game? Do you like football? Oh, well, yeah, I ain't never been, though. Get yourself a ticket. Now, I'm not gotta, spend all that, money to get on the, almost on the field. No, but just be in the arena. Sometimes it's just call in sick. Take a day for you and do whatever you want to do.
So how is that helpful? Because I'm just hearing, I don't know. How does that help them?
It gives them permission, because a lot of times they were like, well, other people can do it, but I can't. And like, why can't you? Well, because, you don't, that's not an answer.
So you're saying when people don't have a child, they can come as angry?
Yes, they can.
They miss the childhood. So you're making these recommendations to give them an opportunity to be a child as an adult.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That it can make them angry, and it gives them the space to release the anger, right? Because, and sometimes I have them go back and have conversations with the person who hurt them. And I will say this, for one Black male client in particular, it was life-changing for him. How this person saw, because they came to me indicating like, I don't even feel my emotions. But during about midway through our first session, I asked one particular question and the floodgates opened. And they were more freaked out that they were crying than what I actually asked them about. They're like, I can't believe I'm sitting over here crying like this. Nothing was gonna be able to get me.
I think that's wonderful that, first of all, I love it when we're talking about our Black men showing up and coming to therapy sessions. And I'm just hearing what you say. And, my husband, he's great. He's fantastic. But my son is 3, he'll be 4 in June. He kisses a lot. It's actually, it can be a little bit annoying. But it just, drives my husband crazy, especially if he tries to kiss him in the mouth or something like that. And I could just see, my husband's like, be a man, and I'm just like, but he's 3, like let him have this childhood thing. So I don't know if that's like an extreme example, but I do know as black boys in general, I remember when I was working with these I was supervising these interns, guidance counselors at a school, and an 8-year-old boy, a little older than my son. But there was the school shooting. It wasn't at this school, but it was on the news and stuff. And he was terrified. And the counselor did not know how to connect. I mean, I'm like, this is a boy, this is a child. He's scared, And so how are we? I mean, I think in both ways. I think with our young boys, we're not letting them be children. We're not letting. This idea of being a man, is over. And then with women, with girls, it's an adultification of them. Sexualizing them and calling them fast and grown. Like, can we speak a little bit about that inner child?
Oh, please, yes. Let's start with the example of your son first. He's 3 years.
Yeah.
He's loving. He is operating in all of his emotions, right? But then we shut our boys down to only feel anger, nothing, or right. False. That's a false life, right?
Right.
But there is actually a documentary. I don't know if you've seen it. The 3 worst words to tell a boy.
Wow. Okay. Say it again.
Suck it up.
Okay.
And secondly, because it talks about how boys in American culture are socialized to detach from all their emotions, only feel what society says is masculine and safe, right? But then when they get in these relationships or they get into a situation and they're supposed to use all of the facets of their emotions and they're only drilled down to 3, they are left either feeling anger and rage, so acting out, right? Or a complete shutdown where they say nothing. Situation, they lose so many pieces of themselves if they've ever been able to know themselves. Let's be very because a lot of times men in our culture will piecemeal what a male is together, right? And they'll say, I saw this, I didn't like that, so I don't want to be like them. But then this your uncle, or my dad always told me this, okay, so I'm gonna be like that. But then my grandma told me that men don't do da 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 da. You know what I'm saying? And so they're like, okay, well, I gotta fit in somewhere in this box, or in themselves. So when they get into a love relationship and their partner is like, why don't you talk to me? And it's just like,
how to talk,
right? Whoever cared about my voice, right? Conversely, if they are, so here's the flip side. If they were nurtured and allowed to explore all of their emotions, and so sometimes they can come and they can be their full vulnerable selves, their partner could be like, be a man, man up, like everything else. And it's just like, what do you want? I'm saying, because there's no Frankenstein. And if you look at Frankenstein was a piece of everybody put together. He's still with them. Right?
Yeah.
But the girls are always, especially if you grew up in church, like I grew up in the Black church, the Church of God in Christ, and we was Jezebels and everything else. You know what I'm saying? We couldn't wear red and, different things like that. God forbid you actually have a self-expression and a mouth.
Right.
And so sometimes it's that piece of connecting to yourself, really finding out who you are and being able to give that identity and owning it and not apologizing.
Right.
Because we get indoctrinated with so many different messages, and it's just like, okay, I wholeheartedly reject that. I can take a little piece of this, I don't believe it, but the other part I don't agree with, but I see this part. We need to change how we nurture our girls. They're not always, in this cooking and cleaning thing and taking care of a house. Hello. We have our jobs before that. You know what I'm saying? We are hearkening and still raising our children from a time where, let's be very clear, women couldn't own property. Women couldn't work outside the home. Even to the point, and as recently as I believe in the 80s, women were just given the ability to apply for a credit card on their own, because before you had a husband to actually get a cosigner. So when people are throwing this, well, our grandparents' relationship, why can't we go back to our grandparents' days? Because women got rights.
That part.
And before, God bless our grandparents, some of them had to stay because they had no other option, right? Now, other ones, they just worked it out and they worked it through. And they're like, listen, divorce is not an option. There is no the exit strategy. But those, bless their heart, But now we have options, but we also have to weigh the pros and cons of what our choices are too.
Love it. Can we touch a little bit more on the adultification piece of little girls? And
Yeah. Yes, we can. Because, and especially for Black girls, right? We tend to develop quicker. So we look, it's so funny. The younger we are, the older we look sometimes. And we hit this other side.
It goes the other way. Yeah.
And so you know she's 13.
Right.
Oh, she's 13. But then why she dressed like that? So it's that piece. And so what we have to do is just learn to see our girls as girls, first of all. And as a child who just protected, out here paying her own bills yet or anything like that. So just like sometimes we coddle our boys sometimes,
yes,
we that we're extending that same grace and mercy to our girls. And also talking to her about self-esteem. Because girls get picked apart. I mean, I remember being in elementary school and God,
they're brutal. They are brutal. Yeah.
Like, now that I know, if I could go back to my 8-year-old self, I'll be smacking some boys around.
I know, that's right. Oh, the funny thing is, they all ugly today. You know, I'm like, wait a minute.
Literally.
I let you bully me when I was 7 and you looking like that at 40.
And it's, I mean, literally. And the funny thing is, me and my friends, we had that conversation. It's just like the ones from middle school, high school, and everything else that we felt like we had to measure up for. It's like, ew.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't even believe it.
I really release myself. And I forgive myself from still trying to carry the mantle, right?
Absolutely.
But I think, understanding we have to change the way that we, again, we treat and talk to our girls too. So it's okay to be loving. It's okay to have a nurturing conversation. And it's okay to correct our children without cussing them out either.
Yes, that is true.
You know what I mean? Because we can be angry, be mad, okay?
Right.
But take that rage and anger out on another Black body. Release it somewhere. Come back and have a rational conversation and ask the child, because the child can tell you if they feel safe, what they were doing, why they did it, and everything else, why they did it. Get into their head. Understand the reasoning. Don't think you just know it all, because you really don't. Because a lot of times parents walk away like, I don't get this kid. But you just told this kid, I know exactly what you were doing. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where do you see Black families struggle the most in regards to inner child?
Oh. Love. Knowing what?
Self or each other?
Both. Because if I ask one, it's like, okay, I'm hearing you need this from this person needs this from you, but do you know what it looks like for yourself? And usually I will get a deer in the headlight look, or people start blinking at the ceiling. And then when I ask them and they can't come up with an answer, I'm like, so your answer is no, right? So how do you know your partner is not giving it if you never experienced it for yourself? And so then go further into understanding and truly peeling back the onion, right? Sometimes, now it depends on how deep we're going, right? Because sometimes we really do have to, we gotta excavate, right?
Yeah.
And that may take about 3 or 4 sessions sometimes per person. But if we go through a situation where I'm just like, ooh, your inner child is reigning supreme, I will send that person to individual therapy if they're not already in it. And I'm like, okay, here's some things that you may want to work on with your individual therapist about this, and this. So, but a lot of times it is the love situation and then how we communicate, because love is an expression of communication anyway. And so getting an understanding of why, what makes a person tick, like their triggers, different things like that. And then their expectations. So, like you were talking about in your dissertation, the expectations of marriage and different things like that. This person is not going to fix you or make you complete. They're just supposed to add to your joy. And when I have these people who have this pie in the sky, mentality about relationships, I tell them up front, you're about to be real mad and disappointed with me because you just lied to yourself.
One of the things that's helped me a lot is just understanding that I want people to give me grace and compassion. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we get in those relationships and we put so much pressure on the other person, but we also are not perfect. I mean, we're coming into the relationship with all of our imperfections, all of our childhood wounds, inner child stuff, and we want somebody to love us.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that requires vulnerability, and that's the dreaded V word, because what we're trying to do is avoid that at all
costs, girl. I ain't letting you hurt me. I'm not putting myself out there for you to,
You're going to tell business.
Yeah.
Have that business. I mean, you get what I'm saying?
Right.
Or if it is our business, it's just like, you'll be amazed at how many people have a similar story, but walking in a different way. Right? So we want this connectivity without trying to really push ourselves to be a better, more well-rounded, vulnerable person. And so we get this, just accept me as I am. And while that can be as you are, becoming a better self, yes, but that does not mean that somebody needs to actually accept you while you are operating at the highest level of dysfunction either. But it's not fair. Not definitely the person, but also the person who wants the love.
Right, correct. I love that. What would you give someone wanting to do some inner child work, but they're afraid or maybe traumatized and just really just intimidated by the process?
So here's talking about grace, right? I just say it may not be your time. It may not be your time. Take your time, really think it through. And I ask them, like, what is the biggest fear factor that comes up for you when you think about therapy? Or just thinking about, not even just therapy, but talking about your story, right? If the person is just like, I don't know what's there and I don't know what's going to come up and come out. And I'm like, I appreciate your level of vulnerability and your experience with fear in that situation. But I encourage them to do their due diligence with finding a therapist if they're thinking about it, right? I always tell people, like, interview your friends. Your friends will tell you if they like the therapist or not, or if they even go, right? And sometimes it's just like, okay, do you like reading? Do you like journaling? I have people journal out their feelings. And maybe then they'll come to the root cause. Another thing I have them do is like a 5 why exercise. Ask them why 5 times. Like, so say, I'm afraid to go to therapy to expose my story. Why am I afraid to go to therapy to expose my story? Because I think people will judge me. Why do you think people will judge you? And so down to the 5th answer of the why, that's generally the root cause.
I love that. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna do that with my kids. Okay. I want to eat your broccoli, but no, I get it. I get it.
But no, and also it helps with those people, people don't want to get into the feeling zone, right? They want to stay up here. So with the 5 why, it hits you with the logic first, right? So it gets a little safer. But then I also tell them, I'm like, listen, it just may not be your time. If you have any other questions, you can always reach out to me and we'll have a conversation about it,
So do people come to you to ask for inner child work, or they just work with you and you realize at some point they need inner child work?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Both. I introduce the topic when I'm just sitting there, like, because when I'm talking to somebody or whatever, and I see them, how you read the body language, right? You see a person draw, and it's just like, ooh,
yeah,
right there. What was that? Right? Right. So then you bring it up, and then other ones are like, nope, I know I got this inner child wound because at 5 and at 8 and at 12, I'm like, oh, okay, you can't locked and loaded. Let me get these ages down so we and see other ones potentially that are there.
Okay. Therapy is great. Of course, we both are strong advocates for therapy. But what are some other resources that you might recommend for people to tap into some inner child work?
Use your community. A trusted tribe of community. Okay. But also, if you don't have one because you've isolated yourself because of your inner child wounds, go create one. So illusion.
I mean, on Facebook, you already said you're in my Facebook group.
Right.
There's a Facebook group for everything. And like she said, if there's not, create one.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Between Facebook, Meetup.
Yep.
Right. If you're involved in church, if you are, a person of faith, wherever you choose to worship, there are many. Join one. Other people go there and leave as like, a ghost or somebody lurking in the corner. No, get involved.
Get involved, yeah.
Sometimes it's the reconnection of relationships that you really miss. And maybe it may not have been damaged. It's been hurt, but it's okay. Give yourself the gift of repair. So yeah.
I love that. Any podcasts, books, anything like that can also help?
I think so. So there is a...
Besides Unprisoned. Unprisoned's a good one. You referred that one to me.
This is a really good book.
Okay. Oh, Thema.
Dr. Thema Bryant.
Thema Bryant, okay.
So it's talking about how to reconnect yourself after having trauma, fear, and all different, and trying to make yourself somebody for somebody else, right? So back to those messages that we receive, like, oh, you should be this, you shouldn't do this, right? Homecoming is coming home to yourself, as her definition book.
Okay. Oh, right? Okay.
Yes, this is a really good book. Also, there's a book, it's called Grief is Love.
Oh.
Yes, Grief is Love. And so it talks about the journey through grief and giving yourself the permission to love yourself and allowing yourself to come to terms with whatever it is, right? And a lot of times with inner child wounds, there is a lot of grief work involved.
Okay. Love it. Is there a myth, a common myth about inner child wounds that's kind of messing up this Black community?
The only one I can think of potentially is somebody thinking like, you going back and talk to your child, yourself. Is that like voodoo? No, it's not. It's the voice that's in you anyway. That's been, and for different, depending on which cultural religion that you're in, they say the Holy Spirit goes in the past, is with you in the present, and goes before you in the work to heal the past, get you together here, and set it up for you in the future, right? So it's just you're going back and you're like, okay, I released myself because I've been held back. I haven't given this child space and a voice. I haven't been listening to him. I'm gonna give her that voice, but then I'm gonna tell her I got this and I can go through it.
If there's just one thing, if this whole show, if there's one thing you want our Black families to take away from the concept of inner child work, what would that be?
Oh, that's a really good question, Doctor. That's a good question. I think get in tune with you so you can have the best legacy of what it looks like to love yourself through a healing process while recovering from trauma or whatever. Because that's going to be a gift for all the generations after that.
Love it.
Yep.
So you said if you work on yourself, if you get to the root of it, it's going to help not only you and not only this relationship, but the future relationships that come up. And I think something in this, I think people don't understand or take into consideration that what they do today is affecting what's going to happen in the future.
Absolutely. We get to parent our children differently. It's not out of this. We have a lot to fear as Black people in this country. Let's be clear, right? But then at the same time, we deserve to give our children that loving environment, not oppressive situation, right? And so we want that healthy, loving family that knows how to nurture and really grow and become a safe space for each other. That's what we got to give for ourselves first, right? So even when we're having a disagreement with our spouse or our partner, right? Our children are witnessing this and they're behavior. So they're learning, okay, I'm gonna cuss you out and I'm gonna hit you below the belt and I'm gonna cut you good and deep. And then I'm gonna come back and then I'm not gonna own anything. I'm gonna blow you off. So it's gonna be.
You're not seeing us do it.
Yep. And I'm just kitchen and cook and act like ain't nothing ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and let me quantify that statement. I am not saying that if a couple is having a big blowout, they should do it in front of the children. No, but it is healthy sometimes to see conflict.
I'm so glad. Yes, you're the second therapist on the show who has said that. Yes. See, I grew up thinking it was just bad. You know what? What I saw was bad. So that's to your other argument. But yeah, no, it's good that I tell my daughter all the time, especially if she gets mad at me or she gets mad at her brother. You know, I said, listen, isn't that normal? Like you see mommy and Dino, she calls dad Dino get mad at each other all the time. Like we still love each other. Like we're still supporting each other. We're still working through it, and we apologize in this home. I don't care how old you are, you know, both ways, you know.
Yeah.
And things like that. You had like this concept of not having conflict. It just blows my mind. So I'm like, that ain't normal.
I grew up in a house where my parents didn't argue in front of me, so I didn't know. My parents have been married 59 years this year.
Oh,
but
wow.
Dr. Connie, I did not know that my parents argued. And the first time I heard them argue, I was 18, and I was trying to get ready for school because I was going to college and everything. I stayed home. But when I tell you I had a whole meltdown,
Wow.
and that their argument, and they ran in my room like, what's happening? And I was just like, you were arguing. And I was like, you're getting a divorce. That's the first thing. And they were like, where are you on that? And that's why I was like, what do you mean? It just imploded my world.
Because you had never seen it before.
Exactly. And I still have to ask them some questions too, like, so what y'all been doing? You know? And then like,
just curious, do you think your parents' 59 years of marriage has influenced your LMFT career?
Oh, it definitely has, but I can't say that it's all been positive influence. No, it hasn't.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've had to unlearn a lot of things they did wrong, right? Be able to accept the overall marriage because, you know what I'm saying? Be able to accept, but then also understand what blended families look like. Choice, meaning infidelity is involved, and a child is produced from that.
Me too, girl.
You know, and that's, you know, a labor within itself right there. Recovery from infidelity is very difficult because people have so many conceptions about infidelity, the reason why, and everything else. But then, now I'm gonna tell the world, I'm leaving, but I love this person with my whole heart, and my life ain't gonna never be the same. You may have to stay. You may have to work that thing out. There can be a great relationship after, but you got to work through that. And especially if there's a child produced, right? But it goes into how we show up and what we want to do on a day-to-day basis.
I was going to transition into our next spot, but you just touched on something that I want you to talk more about. And I know, you know, personal stuff is one thing, but from even from a professional perspective, infidelity.
Yeah.
Most people have sex with more than one person. Is that pretty accurate? So, and I'm not trying to, I'm just taking my own stuff out of this. I'm going to try to take my own stuff out of this. I'm not asking what is the issue with infidelity. I understand why that's wrong, why that's bad, why it's hurtful. My hesitancy a little bit, and my confusion, I guess, a little bit is people put so much emphasis on it. I wonder if that encourages it a little bit. From the perspective of, are people attracted to themselves to people with a chronic pattern of infidelity? What does that look like? That's one thing. And my next thing, and this probably is some of my stuff, but is there a difference? Like you said, there's infidelity that produces a child, you know, and then there's just, okay, I'm a man, I need to prove I got it. Let me be stupid for a night. You know what I'm saying? And then there's, you know, I love her, I'm not gonna leave her, you know, whatever. I mean, is there different levels to this? Because I've always just thought very, like, when I hear the word infidelity or cheating, I always just want to know more. Like, you know what I mean? In terms of, it's really between that couple. It's had nothing to do with me, but just in general, I just feel like we're so quick. Oh, if he cheats, I'm leaving. And one, you're chronically attracting yourself to cheaters, and two, so it keeps happening. It's a self-fulfilling philosophy. And then, is there a different level of emphasis that we should place on different dynamics of cheating? One, this is a baby, it's going to bring something. One where you fall in love, it's going to bring something. One that's just let me get my rocks off, let me feel good in the moment, whatever. Is that different? I don't know. What are your thoughts? You're the expert.
Above, right? Because you do have those things where a person is chronically a habitual cheater, mm-hmm. And it's because sometimes they felt abandoned and rejected, right? And so that
happens a lot.
Oh yeah,
especially in our community. I think so many people think that's normal. Especially with men, because I already know, I could tell by you talking, I just assumed it was, probably the father. It was definitely my father that had the baby. And you're just like, some people just think that that's what men do.
But those are the ones who is infidelity throughout the whole.
Correct.
So it's for them. Then there's other families where nobody has ever cheated. And it's just, hey, your family ever cheated? Never.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. But because of so learned behaviors, so grandpa did it, daddy did it, uncle did it, auntie did it, different things. It's the observed, learned the pattern of behavior. Sometimes it's the feelings of abandonment and rejection, right? Because it's like, okay, well, I don't feel good enough, so I'm going to seek people out, and I'm going to attention seek to feel good enough. And if we look at it, sex is a stimuli, almost like sugar, right? So you get them endorphins going off and everything else, and orgasms happen, and you get the holy grail of everything, but then you got to come back to reality and suffer with the consequences after it's done, if it's discovered, right? Mm-hmm. Other times it's, depending on the type of relationship. You know what I'm saying?
That part, yeah.
It's an open relationship, so it's not cheating as long as you're informing the partner. Now, if you go out here and you dibble and dabble outside of the partners that the person knows about, then you cheated, right? And that's a level of betrayal and disrespect, right?
It is.
And so,
one of which is hard. You correct me if I'm wrong, but it's hard to allow it, and then I don't know. I guess I thought I'm not even going to ask that question. I'm not going to.
I'll put it like this. I think I know where you're going. There are purists in every type of relationship, and then there's violators of every type of relationship too. Mm-hmm. You just have to figure out which one you get.
Right.
Yeah, go from there.
But can a person? I think anybody can be unfaithful. I truly do. Even somebody who's never done it before.
Yes.
I guess is a one night stand or a couple of nights, whatever. And I guess it depends on how invested you are in the relationship and the marriage or whatever. But I don't know. I don't want to say it's not a big deal, but I think I'd be heartbroken. You know what I mean? Like, I think it would just tear me up. But I don't think I have that strong, I'm just, whatever. Now, granted, we've been married 12 years, we've got 2 children, I don't know. Like, the infidelity piece, I think we put more emphasis on it. Okay, I would be much quicker to be like out of this bad boy if he was like beating on me, okay, or taking all the money and not letting me, and I just feel like we focus on this thing that I think sometimes we draw, okay, you're not having sex with them, you're disrespecting them in all types of ways, you do it, not blaming the woman, but I'm just saying sometimes these things are happening where we're not focusing. But then there's other things. What about respect? What about companionship, partnership, other areas that you might not want nobody to cheat on you, but he beat the hell out of you. Like, what is the,
Yeah. Oh, I get it. And the thing is, all of that can play into it, or it can be a situation where they have the happiest, home life ever. You know what I'm saying? Every need is being met by both sides, and you never thought it would happen, and it can still happen.
Absolutely.
I think in the grand scheme of things, couples need to sit down, because just like you just said, I worked with someone and said, okay, if my husband cheated on me, I would forgive him. I would definitely forgive him. We work it through.
Daniel, if you listening to this, don't be getting no ideas. Go ahead.
Okay.
But
But other ones are like, okay, in the grand scheme of things, our life, this person has added so much joy and value to my life. If they messed up one time, I can forgive it. Now, if it becomes a habitual thing, they're like, oh, we have to cross that bridge when we get there, because I don't know if right. And just similar, like, start putting your hands on me, or that one time. Patient. Right? I think it goes by the priorities for the couple, right? And the hierarchy of importance of things that could or couldn't happen in a relationship.
Does it have anything to do with our psyche too, though? Like, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but if you are more concerned about infidelity, when we know that most people are not monogamous throughout the course of their life, okay? But you don't have that same level. It's also not natural to be beating up on people. But people, we're not saying as quickly, oh, well, if he hits me, or if he calls me the B word, or whatever, we're not talking about that type of stuff in the same way we are about cheating. And it's almost like, to me, I feel like there's some inner child work there that needs to be worked through.
Oh, absolutely. Because here's the thing. When you say it's not normal, that's not normal for your family.
Correct.
Completely normal. Mm-hmm. And I've experienced this, when you were practicing, where a person is used to verbal abuse. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, they don't recognize when they're being verbally abused, right?
Right.
But the minute somebody grabs them the wrong way, they're like, oh, I went to jail last night. You're like, why you go to jail? Yeah. He put my hands on him, I beat him up.
Right.
Like, but he been talking to you like, but my mama used to talk to my daddy like that. Mm-hmm. And it's, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So they normalized experiences, right? That you don't see the difference from. So,
Well, I'm just curious. I wonder if we were to tie the infidelity piece too. Do you think sometimes, especially if a child comes into, then there's the embarrassment. Now everybody knows, or maybe if somebody knows the person you were with. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is it's easier to hide unless there's like a bruise or something on your eye. It's definitely easier to hide emotional abuse. It's easier to hide physical abuse unless he's just leaving bruises. But sometimes with infidelity, it's a lot harder because people might see them together, or they might, like I said, there's a baby or something born. So I'm just wondering if the humiliation piece on top of the disrespect is what makes maybe infidelity a little bit harder than with other people.
It could, but then there's also a culture of silence. Because many times have John and Janie been seen out, and a family member or a friend was like, oh, there goes such and such wife or such and such husband.
But it ain't my business. I ain't gonna say nothing.
Move on. Yeah. Talking first, right? So the humiliation factor sometimes comes in, I think, when there's a big exposure. So, and
like a child.
A child, or like, say it's a clergy person and they got caught, they got to go in front of the church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that right there is similar. Like, oh, stand that. But so yeah, it can definitely do a number on someone's psyche, but also it goes with the choices and decisions. But when you're talking about infidelity too, you have to understand, how are we defining it? Because people have emotional affairs before they have a physical affair. So when what I'm saying, this is my work husband or this is my work wife. What you mean? Because you don't get to,
Yeah.
And so that person is catering to their emotional needs. And sometimes while the person goes home, disconnects from work, they're yearning to reach out to the spouse.
Right.
Right? And that could be considered dependent on the person. Sometimes people would be like, listen, I could care less what that person at work got to do. Shoot, they get them out my hair until they get home. Okay. But for people who are like, no, I am strictly monogamous, this is the deal.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, these are all some really great points that you brought in, especially at the end. I really like how you helped to clarify some things. I want to transition now to a part in the show. We're going to be wrapping up soon. It's called What's Good. And What's Good is just where I give a hypothetical situation about a potential case you might get. And I'd like for you to kind of counsel us through us, or at least tell us what you would recommend for counseling.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. Meet Janae. I always try to think of a name that's not someone I know because I don't want to offend anybody. So, all right. Meet Janae. Janae is a 40-year-old African-American woman. She is a very successful dentist, and she is married to her second husband and has one child. Janae works long hours. She makes a lot of money, and she spends and she's getting used to life with a blended family. However, she's very cold and very standoffish. She doesn't have strong relationships outside of her work life. She's the center of attention with her family. Things have to be really on her. She has to be like the best in everything. And she has a mean streak, one of which is part of the reason why she's divorced. And she has a tendency to just really be a part of the cancel culture, even in relationships that she chooses to maintain, by doing things like the silent treatment or just really not forgiving the infractions of others. What if she came to you for therapy and wanted to work on her inner child wounds? Where would you start with her?
Oh, I would start with the genogram.
Oh yeah, tell us about the genogram.
So the genogram, for, in a layperson's terms, if you ever watch the genealogy shows, like Finding Proof for African American Lives or anything like that, they go back and they look at, the people of your ancestral history, right? When we look at the relationship quality and how people formulated relationships, what was involved. And we try to go back 3, sometimes 4 generations if the person is aware. A lot of times with Black people, we may get the 3rd generation back, and that's about it. But we look at the quality of relationship. Were people married? Were they not? Were there substance abuse? Was it alcoholism? Was it?
I never knew that. I knew what a genogram was, but I never knew you could do that with marriage family. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I take it a step further though, and I do an environmental genogram, meaning, okay, what area, did these people come from? What was it like in those areas? Who were they around? Who were they seeing? And so that also adds to how we show up in relationships. So for instance, if we come from a very rural area, where our neighbors weren't that close, but everybody knew each other, there's a tendency sometimes to avoid people being all in my business, right? Because it was nothing to do but gossip. And in general, somebody either they knew or very close to, if not themselves, was a town, was the issue that the town had, right? They were always about them and different things like that. So they kind of distanced themselves from rural environments sometimes, right? Firstly, growing up in an urban environment, what was it like? You know what I'm saying? Were you a major city urban environment, or were you a smaller town urban environment? What was it like? How did you formulate relationships? What messages did you receive, right? And what did you experience around you? And so then we will likely get to the root of where this perfectionism comes from, the lack of empathy and grace, which is a punitive thing, because in general, there was an injustice where this person felt like they didn't have the opportunity. So guess what? They're not going to give it to anybody else either. And then we're going to explore the roots of what, if they knew any healthy relationships. And if they didn't, what was the relationship they saw that had the most impact on them?
Love it, love it, love it, love it.
And then we would go from.
So even if they had a relationship, observed relationships that were unhealthy, you're saying that still has value?
Oh, absolutely. Because when you pick it apart, it's like, okay, well, how do they communicate with each other? And in general, it's going to be chaotic. Or it could be just the shutdown and the cutoff. It's like, well, my mother got mad. She just gave him a silent treatment. Okay. Who also does that, And so these different behaviors as we kind of go through our coping process to manage conflict. And
I really try to, excuse me, I want to make sure we don't lose sight of this. I really try to emphasize the success part of this person too. Do you think that sometimes there's a correlation between people needing to be successful and defined by society standards and monetary standards because they feel like they can't be successful interpersonally?
oh, absolutely. Or one of their family members was a black sheep. And so now I'm gonna show everybody what came from the black sheep. And you're gonna need me before I need you. So
you had to call me out like that. But, okay. On my own show, but okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
It definitely happens. You can sit around looking like, good Lord. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? But that perfectionism, because grades and, the esteem and, different things like that. Making sure that even if you have cousins, nobody is going to outdo you. Which talks about...
You know what? We're going to have to close this because you're doing too much. No, I think it is so important though. I've really gotten into even learning a lot about high functioning depression.
Yes.
And we glamorize these things, and it's enrooted like in our culture and stuff, because even if we want to take it back to slavery, and I know your time is valuable, so we're going to be wrapping up soon, but if you want to take it back to centuries ago, the better you were, it's like you want to be better. You just want to be, I think it's natural to want to be better and be at the top. And it's taken me a long time to realize that some of the motive and some of the desire is from a woman.
Yes, but I want to go back to the example that you talked about. If you were there, let's just say, okay, in the South it was sugarcane and cotton, right? We already know what one little piece of cotton looked like, right? Right, and it took forever, right?
Yeah.
First of all, as cotton picker, a lot of times they were struggling to make sure that they actually could go back home.
Because they'd be so mean to them at home?
Not only that, no, not even just at home. They didn't get sold. If they were slacking, what did you need a lazy slave for, right?
Right.
They're going to fall from your family. The survival and keeping your family intact, right? And potentially protecting the younger generation so that they don't have to experience what you're doing. You can at least teach them to be just as good, if not better. And so, and then also sometimes it might have been a situation where they didn't, they got talked to like hell at home. You know what I'm saying? You just never know. It could be that. But in general, it's like, okay, you were the best. You stayed on that plantation. The master wasn't good, and they gave you privileges. So like, with blacksmiths and carpenters, they were leased out to other farms. So they had the day passes where they could actually go between. Now, if they got sold, sometimes the day pass was at the plantation where their family was too. So again, it's maintaining that status and standard so I can get the privilege of doing what I need to do or whatever it is.
Gosh, that was such an eye-opening. Okay.
Thus, the remnants of PTSS.
Hello, post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Yeah. So, it's a lot involved with all of that. You know what I'm saying? And even like, I was talking about earlier, when one enslaved person chose to leave, the other ones who stayed, they were tortured. You know what I'm saying? But then you gotta still up to get, through that and everything else until the next thing happens. So listen, that's a dynamic within itself.
We're gonna have to come back and talk about that for real. Well, Darnita, this has been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed interviewing you.
I have enjoyed this time that we have spent together. Thank you.
So I know we're going to have some people who want to get in touch with you. So make sure you send me the link to your practice. Are there any other ways that people can find you online?
Yes. So I am on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook under Agape, and that's AGAPE, healingwellness.com. Or that's the website. but then take off the .com, and that's all social media.
Agape Healing Wellness.
Yeah. Healing and
Wellness. Agape Healing and Wellness.
Yep. Yep. And then also, like I said, I used to co-host a podcast myself. It was Theralit, Two Dope Therapists. We stopped it, but you can go back and listen to those.
Yes, love it.
Information on there. And so, yeah. And then, like I said, if you see me in Charlotte when I'm visiting, please come say hi to me. Or if you see me and you're visiting or you happen to live here, holla at me.
Will do. Awesome. Y'all hear that? Holla at Mrs. Darnita Samuels. All right, Darnita, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a pleasure interviewing you. You be
so much. I really appreciate you and this platform and this podcast that you're doing.
You're doing great. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming, and you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Since you've listened all the way through, come on in and join the family. If you haven't done so yet, please join our free community where we offer weekly trainings and monthly giveaways. We can be found on Facebook under the Black Marriage and Families Matter Facebook group. And since you're serious about joining our family, we also invite you to join our All In campaign, which signifies your commitment to go all in, not only for yourself, but in helping us reach more people by downloading this podcast wherever you are listening to it, leaving us a review, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This really helps us reach more people and change more lives. After all, Dr. Martin Luther King once said, we can all get more done together than we can apart. With that said, I want to encourage you to share this episode with just 3 other people who you think might also benefit from our community and what we are offering, with the hopes that all of you can join our All In campaign. When you're done, simply click the link All In Campaign in the bio and receive a free copy of my course entitled Goodbye Toxicity, which is valued at $297. This course will help you to work through some of the difficult experiences that arise in most of our relationships, and it's completely free to you with your commitment to join our All In campaign. We look forward to connecting with you every Monday and Wednesday. Thanks for listening.